Not much time on a Wednesday. Appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football for the College Football Show. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, early, Thursday, Friday, late. That's the deal here at the Voice of College Football. Again, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We have moved the late night show on Thursday, Friday to post game here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you dropping by. All right. Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. When you shop on Amazon, please use our link. It is transparent to you in every possible way. Everything is tracked. Everything is exactly the way it is using your Amazon link. It identifies your account. It's perfectly, immediately transferable. Everything works. Give it a shot. The Amazon link's in the description section of this video and all the videos. All right. We're going to run through week 5. We got Sonny Verma stopping by from Locked On Illini to break down Illinois and Penn State. We had a conversation with Marty Leap from Penn State Rivals yesterday, and that should be posted in various places on the Big Ten channel right here at the Voice of College Football again. So we've got a Big Ten channel, and we've got a lot of great things in store for that venture. So check out the Big Ten channel. And again, the interview we had and conversation with Marty Leap from Penn State Rivals, Penn State, Illinois, big point spread for this one, despite Illinois' improvement. Probably the biggest surprise in college football, the most significant surprise in college football, because they've got one Big Ten significant win under their belts, and they're looking for more. Last time they went to Happy Valley, 9 overtimes, and they got it done as a huge underdog. Okay, before we get to week 5, there's this matter of the news that I got to think, if you love college football, at this point with NIL and the transfer portal, you're probably like me, pretty oblivious to it at this point to a certain extent, not emotionally impacted, but still just kind of grates on your nerves just a bit. And so UNLV is a team that we've talked about more here than we have ever, because this is arguably the worst program in the history of college football. Just about the worst winning percentage, just horribly non-existent, just a blip, not a blip on the radar of the history of college football. The program could go away, nobody would know. Just completely insignificant. However, this season under Barry Odom, after a nice 2023 in which they reached the Mountain West Conference Championship game, in which there may not be one of those here pretty soon, but the Mountain West Conference Championship game, the Runnin' Rebels off to a running start at 3-0 with a win against Kansas and Houston. So they're 2-0. They own 2 of the, I believe, 4 wins for the group of 5 over the Power 5, still 5, Power 5, but they lost their quarterback, not due to a season-ending injury. No, that was not the situation. I almost wish it had been. But this is what we've got going here in this day and age. Quarterback Matthew Sluka to exit UNLV says representations not upheld. UNLV starting quarterback Matthew Sluka said he will not play any more games this season for the undefeated Rebels, citing, quote, certain representations that were not upheld by the program. Sluka announced his decision in a social media post Tuesday and added that he will utilize his red shirt this year. Oh, will he? So, as we dive deeper into this, if there were agreements between Matthew Sluka and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and its NIL program, and they reneged on those commitments, then he is certainly well within his rights to take himself off the team. However, they're, of course, within their rights to then deal with his eligibility and his status on the team as such. If I was in charge from the UNLV side, if I believed this to be a inaccurate depiction of the situation, invalid interpretation of the agreement, and that there was more to it than what seems to be on face value, he can make whatever decision he wants concerning the power that he holds over his career and status with the team. But again, if I felt as though and believed based on the evidence, not a feeling, of course. When I say feel, I mean that it's legitimate, it's documentation. You got to be careful with that word feeling in this society now, because everybody feels a certain way, that way or this way. And those things are many times not the truth, not reality. So with Sluka here, he says, despite discussions, it became clear that these commitments would not be fulfilled in the future. I wish my teammates the best of luck this season and hope for the continued success of the program. Well, if he's being accurate here, that they're not going to be fulfilled in the future, well, then why would he not just leave the program? That doesn't seem consistent to me. It's clear that these commitments will not be fulfilled in the future. Well, then you're not redshirting, you're leaving the program. I would think that would be your response, because what is going to change between now and next year? According to your interpretation and your statement, nothing. So that doesn't seem accurate or consistent. So he did not detail the reasons behind his decision, but college athletes are now routinely being paid for their name, image, and likeness by companies or third-party organizations called collectives, which serve a particular school's athletes. NCAA redshirt rules allow players to retain a year of eligibility if they play 4 or fewer games in a season. Sluka, who played 4 seasons at Holy Cross before transferring to UNLV this past offseason, still has 1 more year of eligibility that he could use at another school next season, which I don't think he wants to state that here, but that would be the only objective righting of the wrong, would be that if he's never going to have his commitment fulfilled here, that he would be moving on. UNLV is 3-0 for the first time since 1984, received 53 total points in the latest Associated Press poll. Unfortunately, ESPN, apparently not aware, ignoring the top 25 that actually makes sense, what actually ranks UNLV appropriately. The Rebels upset Kansas. They beat Houston, as we discussed, raising hopes that they could contend for a spot in the newly expanded 12-team college football playoff. Sluka's 21 of 48 passing this year, so that's not exactly stellar. 318 yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. If you're familiar with his game and UNLV, then you know that he's a runner. The senior transfer also rushed 39 times, 286 yards, whatever that is, 7 yards a carry and a score. So he was at Holy Cross, first in career pass efficiency, rushing yards, second in career rushing yards, second in rushing touchdowns, fifth in passing, fifth in career passing touchdowns. Set a record with 330 yards and a loss to Lafayette in 2023. Rushing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. About Holy Cross, led the game-winning touchdown drive, 18 plays, 75 yards against Kansas, rushed for 113 yards in that game. Now out of the picture. Okay, UNLV figures to turn to either senior transfer Hajj Malik Williams or senior Cameron Friel as its starting quarterback. They had a bye last weekend. They host Fresno State in their Mountain West Conference opener Saturday. So hopefully he is letting all of us know this now. And hopefully he let his teammates and his coaches know this as soon as possible so they could prepare for Fresno State. Because I got to think that, if they've got to bye last weekend, so they had to bye last weekend. So this could have been, let's say, he let all of us know at the same time. He let the world know 10 minutes after he let his coaches and teammates know. Then that wouldn't necessarily be the wisest thing to do or the most stand-up act, but we don't know that. So maybe this has been known by the team for the last week plus. So if they would have played on the 14th. So he could have decided this on the 15th. And they would have all that time to prepare. I don't know what the situation is there. Again, 9-5 last season, Mountain West Conference Championship game. Their quarterback, Jaden Maeva, transferred to USC. So, yeah, I don't think any of us really like this situation. And I would think that if he's no longer going to play at the school, if he's not playing this season, I would yank his scholarship regardless. So that's what I would do, unless it was just discovered and determined and admitted by the school, we blew it. We completely blew it. We trusted X, Y, and Z. We thought we could come through on this. We can't. The collective cannot. We blew it. And therefore, we're going to hold good on your scholarship, but we understand why you're not going to play, because this was not a fulfillment on our part. Jackson's here. We got the call-in line if you want to discuss this or anything in week 5. We're going to go through week 5 next. So at the same time, the football team's dealing with the quarterback situation. Of course, the actual administration is dealing with the decision of whether to stay in the Mountain West or leave. And as was discussed here on this show earlier this week, they did not handle that well. They did not handle that well, regardless of whether it was justified from a decision standpoint. They should not have announced that they had a commitment to the Mountain West Conference. And then later in the day, they made the statement that they were reviewing their options. I don't remember the terminology exactly, but it was something to that degree. So it reminds me of Kevin Warren, Big Ten commissioner at the time, coming out and declaring, we're not playing football in 2020. Stupid decision. You don't make those statements until you've signed the papers off. It's all shut down. It's a done deal. There are no other options. There is absolutely no way. The athletes have been taken off the fields. We're not playing. But he goes out and announces. Now, that did not cost the Big Ten. In the aftermath of it, the immediate aftermath, there was much discussion here and elsewhere that how much will this damage the Big Ten? As it turned out, 0. So good for the Big Ten and the 18 schools currently in the conference. But at the time, there was reasonable discussion, not just trying to find ways to damn the league, but reasonable reasons. Reasons are reasonable, or they would not be called such, that would damage the Big Ten in the future. It did not. I don't know if this situation, whether with the quarterback or with certainly the quarterback situation, worse from a PR standpoint with recruiting than the league flip-flopping decision. The players want to play with good players that can help them win games, and they want to play for coaches that can develop them into NFL players, and they want to make money. That's what they want. So I don't think the situation with the conference is affecting any kind of recruiting or player acquisition through the transfer portal, but this will. I don't know how much the Billy Napier, and I really shouldn't put it at his feet, although he's being named in that situation with Jaden Rashada and the NIL debacle fiasco there at the University of Florida, how much that's hurt recruiting. Rocket Rant says he has a 4-year transfer from Holy Cross. Think he has a decree. Yes. I would think so as well. Talk is Pitt. It's bad for college football. It is bad for college football. So much like the defections, the opt-outs during bowl season, postseason play, we're just going to see more and more of this to some degree. But let's turn to the games on the field this Saturday. Why don't we do that? And we actually have a decent doubleheader on Friday. We've got Washington, Rutgers, and we also have Virginia Tech and Miami. But on Saturday, we've got a nice little setup in Happy Valley where the surprising Illini go to work against Penn State. Sunny stop down the Illini. You can catch Sunny on Locked On Illinois. Hey, Sunny.
How are we doing, Mark?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing okay. Trying to catch up on this whole UNLV quarterback situation and just trying to figure out if this is just the wave of the future at this point for smaller schools.
Yeah, we had the Jaden Rashada situation in Florida. We have this one now. So anytime that so this is just a little conjecture here, but it's pretty reasonable to think that there was an agreement and maybe some money was paid initially, and then money was supposed to be paid down the road, and there was or maybe all of it was supposed to be paid down the road, but maybe some up front and some later. And this is probably, as it is many times, effective in business. But if there was some kind of disagreement or some type of something left out of a contract or something that was not addressed, then it was left up to interpretation, and he's not too pleased.
Or, someone inquired to see just how happy he was at UNLV and said, hey, you're not that happy. We wouldn't mind having you over here at X bigger program next year. You never know with the way college football works nowadays, like with these backdoor dealings. And I just feel like I think we'll find out from like the reactions of the teammates on whose side they're kind of essentially taking, whether. Because at least in my group chats, there's arguments for both sides. Some people are taking his side. Some people are taking the team side. Some people say, he may have gotten an offer from another program, and so he's trying to preserve so he can play again for another year. But then there's people, of course, maybe there was a deal that wasn't being lived up to, and he's upset about it. But it's just tough. 3-0, obviously, they have a chance at possible postseason, and to have your starting quarterback leave. I can't imagine being a UNLV fan right now.
So the scenario that you just laid out, that becomes a potential widespread problem over the scenario that I laid out, which is
Sure.
just common business practice and miscommunication that comes up, or if something's not addressed, yes, miscommunication that can happen anywhere. But what you're bringing up is, yes, bigger schools targeting players just before they lose their eligibility due to playing time, and you've got opt-outs, whatever you want to call them, after 3 games to not hit that threshold of 4. And
Right.
Interesting. Well, Sonny, hopefully your Illinois roster is safe for this season.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, Brett Bielema's philosophy when it comes to NIL funds is he'd rather pay the people already on the team. That's why we're not usually amongst one of the highest recruiting classes in the country, because for him, like, he prefers to pay a guy like Pat Bryant this year. Last year, there's a reason Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph turned down some significant NFL money. It was because, I mean, not as much, of course, but they were still being paid pretty decently at Illinois. And Gabe Yaktis, one of our best linemen right now, apparently, like, he had been approached by a couple SEC teams over the last couple off seasons, but Brett tries to keep the leaders of the team, the guys who've shown production on the field, happy. And, so far it's working to the tune of being 4-0 this year. I don't see how that happens without a guy like Pat Bryant or Luke Altmaier or, Des Briggs Jr., who we just brought in from Florida State. Enjoying the ride so far.
Before we get deeper into Illinois and the matchup against Penn State, Sonny, have you come across any reliable information when it comes to NIL deals? Because I hear a lot of things and I hear a lot of estimations, but I don't know that it's ever substantiated what these guys make.
So for me, my one benefit since I started covering Illinois football is people have reached out to me, people in like significant donors and whatnot who are just fans of the show. And so I think sometimes, when people are just viewers, they like to be involved or connected. And so I've kind of built some sort of relationship with a couple people. I would call them mega donors. And I've also had the head of the NIL for the University of Illinois on my show a few times. So, I mean, I know, obviously I don't know details, but I know kind of what's going on, at least with the Illinois program.
Got Sonny Verma here from Locked On Illini. You've got all the information there on the banner to follow Sonny on X and find him across the board with the Big Ten show. And again, Locked On Illini. All right, we've arrived at 4-0. What's working for this football team that is surprising so many people?
Surprising. Well, I'll just start with me, and that's just the play on the defensive side of the football. Last year, obviously 2 years ago, we lost a lot of talent, and last year the defense pretty much fell off a cliff. But when you look back at it, it was a first-time DC, basically a secondary that was full of freshmen and sophomore trying to replace the 3 guys that went to the NFL. And the one mainstay that we were supposed to have, Matthew Bailey, got injured after 1 series. So really that secondary was depleted last year. This year, a lot of people were calling for Aaron Henry's head, the defensive coordinator, saying Brett made a mistake with that hiring and that he just wasn't ready for the job. Aaron Henry was a former player of Brett's at Wisconsin, and I believe followed him at Arkansas as well. And but Brett was very, very stubborn in the sense saying, in all my years of coaching, the biggest leap for a coach always goes from year 1 to year 2. And he insisted that he had the utmost 100% confidence in Aaron Henry. And so far it's come through. As you know, Justin, who handles the Voice of College Football Nebraska channel here with you, we had a watch party together watching that Illinois-Nebraska game. And multiple times he was just talking about how our secondary, who maybe have guys who are smaller, we have transfers in from MAC schools or whatnot, but they're very coached up and they're going up against, Isaiah Nair, like 4 or 5-star type of talents. But those guys barely had any room because the cornerbacks were just coached to kind of drape them. And so I think that's kind of surprising a lot of people. I think obviously now the narrative or the story, big storyline with Illinois is just Luke Altmaier. 10 touchdowns this year, 0 interceptions. Last year, his last 6 games, he had 10 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. So essentially, his last 11 games or so, he's had 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's basically really grown as a quarterback. He's now in his second year under Barry Lunny Jr. And so, like, there's a comfort level. They kind of know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and they're playing mistake-free football for the most part. And so when you're a program like Illinois, that's what you need to do, because usually, more often than not, especially in the Big Ten, the team that you're lined up against on the other side is probably more talented than you. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're better at football.
Yeah, so we've got Sunny Verma here from Locked On Illini, breaking down Illinois taking on Penn State in what wasn't necessarily considered to be a big matchup when the schedule was released. I don't know that anybody was talking about this game, but they should be talking about it now. Certainly both teams are undefeated, and Illinois is still a substantial underdog. I was expecting north of a touchdown, slightly north of a touchdown, and I'm usually pretty good at this. I can usually go through the schedule, and 1 or 2 are going to surprise me, but the rest of them I've got within a point. And I was thinking, I didn't give it much thought, but when I saw 17.5, I thought, wow, I know where I'm headed on that one.
Yeah,
but
you and I both. I thought it would open around 10, especially with it being in Happy Valley, and Penn State has played reasonably well, and they're top 10 team in the country. But when it at 17.5 actually has me a little bit more worried, because Vegas is usually not wrong about these sort of things. And so what did they know that I don't know? But I mean, most people I know are talking about you got to take Illinois in the points. But again, usually when that happens, that's when a new building or tower in Las Vegas goes up shortly thereafter.
Agreed on that one. So, of course, these two teams got together near the beginning of last season, and it was a game that Penn State controlled. We'll put it that way. I didn't think it was a blowout by any stretch, and the defense played a pretty decent game from memory. But is certainly a game Penn State controlled, whatever the final score was, 31-13 kind of range. Your thoughts about this matchup and what you know about Penn State, and where Illinois could possibly take advantage of a team where it's tough to find an advantage?
Sure. I mean, I think I want to see if the Illinois from last Friday shows up. I think this could be a pretty close game. Penn State struggled with the passing game of Bowling Green, and Illinois has a very good quarterback right now who's very confident, and 2 wide receivers that are going to be playing for our NFL teams next year. So I was taking a look at the PFF grades, and Luke Altmaier right now has something like an 89.2 adjusted completion percentage. And what that means is 9 out of 10 times, as long as Luke Altmaier has a clean pocket, he's throwing to a receiver on target. And that's second in the entire country, behind only, I believe, those Dylan Gabriel. So really, if in the second half, I think we wore Nebraska down by cycling through the 4 different running backs. Each drive, it was a different guy with a different style. If we're able to do that against Penn State and keep their pass rush honest, I mean, their pass rush injured 2 of Kent State's quarterbacks last weekend. If we can keep them honest, I think we have a chance at winning this game. Again, our defense is much improved from last year, and more importantly, I'm kind of hoping this could be the Luke Altmaier revenge game, because last year, he had the 4 interceptions in that first half, and like you said, despite that, the game was, I wouldn't say it's close, but it wasn't as out of hand as could be suggested. So this year it's going to be a little bit different. The talent level in the running back room is better. The offensive line played great against Nebraska. A lot of people assumed, me included, when I was on the show last week, that the Nebraska defensive line would be able to get through to the second level and get to Luke. But for the most part, it didn't happen. And so while it's easy to say the Penn State line was going to do the same, we'll see. The team's balanced, which is what I like. And on defense, they're taking the ball away. Now, Drew Aller's not a quarterback who really gives the ball away. So that's going to be, he's a very careful quarterback, but it should be close. It should certainly be closer than the game that we had last season.
Is Zachary Franklin okay? His health status, he's fine?
Yeah. I missed it last week, but apparently he did come in for like the last couple plays in overtime. But Brett Bielema did talk about that he's fine and that he's fully expected to be a full go on Saturday.
Any other issues on the health status side?
Knock on wood, no. I mean, that's one of the main reasons we've been 4-0 this year. Illinois is not a team that can really handle a significant injury on the team, just because we don't have the depth that other big programs who are constantly recruiting 4 or 5 stars have. We have a couple, guys on the defensive side, but they, for the most part, haven't played this year anyway. Our perceived starting tight end, he's been gone. He was gone in the offseason, and he hasn't played all year. So the team's going to come in relatively healthy, relatively confident. When you go into Lincoln, Friday Night Football, when you're the premier game, I think it's fair to say, and 80% of the college football world is watching you. A lot of people didn't give Illinois a chance. The spread closed at Nebraska -9, but everyone in that locker room believed that they were going to win. And even on my rewatches, like you could see Luke Altmaier the entire time the TV cut to him. Like there was never any sense of panic, never any sense of what should I do now. Even after that, when he got strip sacked, there's a poise to him. There's just a level of comfort with him that I think is instilled by the coaching staff. And so even if this is a second unofficial whiteout energy that the Penn State people seem to be trying to push for Saturday, I don't think the team itself is going to be intimidated by it.
Well, it sure has to beat being what was expected now. 2-2, already a Big Ten lost to Kansas, lost to Nebraska as expected. And we actually have our tougher games in front of us, and we're headed to 5 wins. But man, it's got to feel good going into October with hope and optimism and this perfect record.
It feels great. The Las Vegas over-under, I believe, was 5.5. And, most, I mean, I guess it was 50-50, but usually for the most part, people had them maybe at 6 wins. Rarely did I see the 7 or 8 wins. I ended up doing 7, but only because in the offseason, I made a bold prediction that they would upset Michigan in Champaign because it's the Red Grange game, the 100th anniversary. So I just figured that there'd be some kind of magic energy in the air. Now, granted, the way Michigan's played this year, the game might be a little closer than other people originally thought. But yeah, I knew 7 and 5 was high. But as you said, we have a stretch coming into last week where we're playing 4 out of 5 ranked teams. And you're talking about Nebraska, Oregon, Michigan, and Penn State this upcoming weekend. If we won 2 out of those 5 games, I would have been happy. Purdue's next week. So after this Penn State game, we have a bye week and then Purdue. And the way Purdue's playing, we're hoping to count on that as a win. But to have Nebraska already in the bag and then hopefully we're able to defeat Purdue, having 2 out of 5, I don't think any Illini fan going through November, if you had told them a couple of weeks ago, hey, you're going to be, I guess it would be 6-3 or something like that at the time, we'd all be elated because the back half of the schedule softens up a little bit.
And speaking of Vegas lines, if Minnesota's only a 9-point underdog at Michigan, coming off a 17-point loss at home against Iowa, if both teams play, not that you care what the spread is, because once you hit the field, who cares? Right. But Michigan may not be that big of a favorite when they come to Champaign.
Yeah. And, the way gambling works, I almost wonder, because we know Michigan just runs the ball constantly and the clock is always moving, that for that reason, the spread can't be that high because there's just a limited amount of possessions and the clock stopping. So 9 spread for Michigan may actually, translate to being like a 14, 15 point spread for another big team. But yeah, it's just one of those, it seems it's already 4-0. First time since 2011 where Illinois under Ron Zook went 6-0 and basically followed that up with 6 straight losses, which led to Ron Zook being let go as the Illinois head coach. This team seems different, just coaching wise. They seem to be well coached up. Rod Zook always was very good at bringing talent in, but once they got there, like if the talent didn't win, it usually wasn't the coaching that was going to do it. But here it's kind of the opposite. It's as long as we can avoid the injury bug, I think we can. Very rarely have we been blown out by any team in the Brett Bielema era, which again is what surprised me about seeing the 17.5-point spread. But we'll see what happens Saturday night. For the second week in a row, we go into an opposing stadium where the world doesn't think Illinois stands a chance. So it's like at this point, we're almost playing with house money, having 4 wins in the first 4 games. We'll see what happens.
It's a great story. All right. Illinois, Penn State, NBC, primetime Saturday. Sonny, appreciate you stopping by. And again, you can catch Sonny's work at Locked On Illini. Anything in particular going on this week? Obviously previewing the game, but trying to point people in the right direction. What do you have working for game week?
Just every single day, new content. And I do weekends as well. I try to knock out a 30-minute episode on weekends as well, just because I'm very insistent on trying to grow this community as much as possible. So find me on YouTube, Facebook, all the social medias, Locked On Illini. I do post games immediately after the game. Just enjoying the ride with the season. Basketball season is about a month and a half away, and usually most Illinois fans have tuned out on the football side. But this year, the team's giving them a reason to watch Illinois content a month and a half early, and I'm appreciative of it.
Yeah. You can talk basketball until late March. Why not put off the basketball talk with a winning football team?
I'm good with that.
All right. Sonny, appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
All right. Good stuff from Sonny Verma. Again, there's the setup on Illinois and Penn State in Happy Valley. NBC game as Ohio State and Michigan State play on Peacock. Your other Big Ten games would be Minnesota, Michigan. That's the noon kickoff on Fox. And we'll run through the games here in just a second. Appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. Amazon link is in the description section of all the videos, lest I say they're worth trillions and we are worth slightly less than that. So send a few bucks our way. When you buy anything at Amazon, just look at that dollar value, whatever it is. Did you spend $50, $500, whatever you spent? Then 3 to 5%, something in that range, depending, comes to the voice of college football, and it does not come out of your pocket. You're taking away from Amazon, sending to the voice of college football. That should be a good thing. All right, October 29th, if you enjoy college football history, but with a slant, an angle that projects everything to the future. So this is not just a history book, but this is our book release here, Disputed National Champions, a reset, historical reset of the 1990s. We go season by season, break down all the scenarios, the results, the what ifs, the what it could have beens, the who got left out, all of that business. A lot of lists dealing with, of course, preseason polls, postseason polls, and then a projection toward the future. What would that season have played out? How would it have looked in the BCS era, the 14 playoff era, the 12-team playoff era, and as an added bonus, of course, there is talk about a 14-team playoff, and we sized that up as well. So, and then, what did that season mean in the history of college football? What was the impact of those teams in that season, and how did that chart the course going forward? So October 29th, be looking out for that. I may mention it once or twice on October 29th. That will be available. Speaking of Amazon, everything's on Amazon, so that will be available as well. All right, we've got a few minutes. We've got our Buckeye show coming up at 11 a.m. Eastern time, so we certainly want to get set for that. But we've got a nice little Friday night schedule here to talk about. So if you're a diehard, There you go. It's Army and Temple on Thursday, but look at this doubleheader games on at the same time. Virginia Tech and Miami, that appeared to be the Miami's game on the docket that could give them some issues, but Virginia Tech not playing great football, just lost to Rutgers by a field goal. I watched that game. Miami's been on a roll. South Florida's not a bad football team, and Miami just laid them to waste in the second half. And then again, Washington Rutgers is part of that Fox Friday Big Ten package. Do have a call coming in here at the Voice of College Football. Welcome in. What's going on today?
How you doing, Mark?
Doing well. How are you?
What? I'm good. It's like every morning you're waking up to some new degree of craziness in college football that has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on the field. But
Pretty much.
I guess that's kind of the world we're living in, which is sort of turning college football into a 12-month sport like the NFL, where nothing really ever shuts off. So I just wanted to check in and talk about all the hot takes that are going on around the UNLV QB situation, and just none of us know anything right now, right? Like ultimately, we have word from the quarterback, and obligations not being met. We have back channel stuff happening from the schools about how other people tampered, or he was looking for more money. And I guess we'll all find out what ultimately happens there. But I think that kind of the point I wanted to make is, no matter who's at the right or the wrong on this situation, this also goes back to, until the NCAA and the colleges and the conferences are willing to address the fact that the only way you're going to avoid this, or the Jaden Rashada situation, or any of the other 100 things we're seeing tampering, you need to collectively bargain with the players. Like, that's the only real solution to a lot of these situations. It's not going to DC and begging Congress to give them antitrust, legalization that's going to help absolve them from these kind of things. I don't really see that happening, but this is, a canary in the coal mine. I'm not prepared to say who's the bad guy or the bad guys in this one yet. I know everyone's taking that stance, but I don't know. I just wanted to weigh in. There's a lot of different scenarios out there, and we can't assume what's going to happen, as much as, again, fandoms are all rallying up, and a lot of people are doing the, hey kid, get off my lawn, it's 1975 free education thing, to the, hey, you also can't renegotiate a contract and look for more money just because you had 4 good games. We don't really know what's going on, but I don't know. Just curious as to your take, and how you see this ultimately playing out. Is this the first of many, or just how do you see it all playing out? I know you talked about it a little bit in the beginning of the show, but I didn't get to catch all of it yet, so I'll check it out as well later.
Well, I just basically read what information's been released concerning this situation, and then we had Sonny Verma from Locked On jump on, and we were talking Illinois football, but address this situation, and certainly he had a thought about conversation out there that a big school's going after him for next season, and that he's shutting it down because of eligibility, so that he can move on and play for more money next year. If that's the case, then that is really opening up similar situations to happen over and over and over repeatedly, and that would be nothing we would want. Which your CBA resolution would address that type of situation, and we wouldn't have that just haphazard player movement because something better came along.
Right, for sure.
So there are some positives to every time you bring up contracts and CBAs and those sorts of things. The average college football fan is just turned off by that, and I get it, but we're not going backwards, we're going forward. So the best way to and forward, I don't mean that's necessarily positive. I just mean it's moving forward in the same direction, that you might as well get a handle on it, so we can at least know what to expect, and we can at least have, much like the NFL, player commitment to teams under contracts. That will at least give some stability to these teams to a certain degree, and limited, quote unquote, free agency.
Absolutely. And look, there's definitely a few different scenarios that are going to play out. There's the, it's entirely possible, and it won't be the first time, that he was promised X and didn't get it, right? Clean. There could be a world where that's clean and UNLV is leaking out that that's not true because they're giving themselves cover. That could be a thing. It's entirely possible that UNLV and their collective have completely lived up to everything that he has was promised, and now that they're ranked and they're doing better, and he had 4 years at Holy Cross and didn't have any money and has probably 0 NFL prospects, as great as a college quarterback as he might be emerging this season, that he's taking the one advantage to try to get a check, in which case that's fairly pathetic on his part and makes you just wonder about him if that's the case. There's also a separate scenario where a school is tampering, but I don't put anything past anybody in college football, right? In terms of a school possibly tampering, but I am tampering for a guy who has no NFL prospects for after 3 or 4 games at UNLV seems a little bit outlandish. And there's a scenario where he is getting paid as promised, or that he is not getting paid by UNLV's collectives as promised, and he's being tampered with, right? And he's renegotiating. Like, we don't know, other than this is basically wrapping up every single player-related problem that this NCAA and these schools are encountering all at the same time in a really pronounced case that is capturing everybody's mind, because UNLV is doing really great and positioned to possibly be the G5 representative. They're in the conference realignment mess. It's just, I don't see how all of these things get solved, not to your point of making things better in terms of, like, if you don't like the state of college football, but that era is gone, right? Like, that's not coming back. You're not going to have everybody working for their education and that's all they're getting. It's just not a real thing to be thinking about, at least at this level. For other divisions, it's a little bit different. But to me, it's just like the definite case of how can you throw everything into one possible pot of hell that we all have to solve in order to not have this keep going on, and whether the schools and the conferences are willing to do this once we get all the facts out, which we don't have right now. We just have a lot of people telling us things.
Yeah, as soon as you throw out the term paying players, people don't want to hear that, but they're being paid anyway through the NIL. So this would only be another step in regards to, and it's already in the works of taking the revenue share from the networks and so forth and paying the players. But I see that as, if we're going to go in this direction, which we undoubtedly are, it's, the genie's out of the bottle. It's already rolling in this direction, right? That the stability factor outweighs everything else, in that if you love college football, love your team, and then you bring in a recruiting class and those players have to sign contracts that can range anywhere from 1 year to 4 years, 5 years, that you have a stability factor for your team, and those are going to be your guys, and the guys that get rewarded for 3 or 4 years are going to make more money, and the guys that maybe want to bank on them outplaying their initial contract because, let's say, they were lower recruited players, well, then that's just a semblance of free agency that you see in the NFL, where from year to year 80% of the roster is going to stay the same. We're going to cut 10% of it to make room for new players, and the other 10% are going to leave free agency, but there's a level of stability, at least, to the roster from year to year.
Yeah, for sure. And for the people who are talking about pay, well, there weren't a lot of coaches owning car dealerships for years and decades in the 70s, 80s, and 90s just because they like cars. There's a lot of people have been getting paid for a long time. It's just the method of delivery of the payment that has been a thing, and now at least we have an idea of what might be going on some level. But yeah, I'll wrap it up. Let you go. I just wanted to throw out that, in a way, it's this specific issue for sure, but the bigger issue is the governance on college football that the schools and conferences are completely resisting because they're so angry or so upset about the business model that is evolving once their basically illegal or unfair business model of take your scholarship and like it imploded. And this is sort of the end game of all of that hell and denial for decades.
For sure. Rock and Rant, appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too, man.
Insightful stuff right there. This is something I was just met with this morning, just a few minutes before the show started. I thought, well, this is obviously a big deal because this is an up and coming program, because they're looking to have a breakout season. But more than that, this is a sign of the times, and this is where we are in college football. Therefore, it's not just a one-off. It's the current state of college football, and if not addressed, will repeat itself. Absolutely. All right, let's check on the time. We might as well wrap it up right now. We're 5 minutes away from Ohio State Live over on the Buckeyes channel. Please check it out. We talk Ohio State and Michigan State. Could be a nice little test for the Buckeyes as a 24-point favorite, but Michigan State much better under Jonathan Smith. I caught the fourth quarter against Boston College. Much better team. Played well at Maryland. Should have won the Boston College game. Blew it with a late interception in the end zone, and they could be a challenge for Ohio State. So again, Buckeyes Live's coming up in 5 minutes over on the Ohio State channel, and we will see you then. College football is even more exciting with some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.